Okay, Solicitors report.
The first item on the report concerns the current lease for the police station located at 20 to 22 Liberty Street. There is currently a lease in place that was originally executed on August 14, 2000, that provided for an initial 5-year term and successive options to renew for additional 5-year terms. The lease was renewed on August 14, 2005, and currently is set to expire on August 14th of this year. The lease requires that in order to renew the lease and exercise the options to renew, Borough needs to provide written notice to the Fire Association, Newtown Fire Association, no later than 90 days prior to the expiration of the existing term. That would be May 16th, would be 90 days prior to August 14th of this year. I have prepared and circulated among council a proposed letter that would go to Michael Errico Sr., the president of the Newtown Fire Association, giving notice that the borough is exercising its option to renew, and we would need a motion authorizing the president of council to execute and forward that letter to the Newtown Fire Association.
Can we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is a public hearing for the adoption of ordinance number 703. This concerns a parking restriction prohibition on Jefferson Street. I'll read the substantive provision of the ordinance. States that Chapter 146 of the Code of Ordinances of the Borough of Newtown is hereby further amended by the addition of the following to Section 146-33.b. Name of the highway is Jefferson Street. Side is the south side. Location 54 feet west from the southwest corner of the intersection of Jefferson Street and Liberty Street. That section would be under a provision in the Code of Ordinances that prohibits parking. So this would prohibit parking on the south side of Jefferson Street for a length of 54 feet west of the Liberty Street intersection. This ordinance was prepared at the request of the police chief, who had a concern about visibility at that corner in light of the new stop signs that were placed at that corner recently. So I would ask for a motion to adopt ordinance number 703, amending Chapter 146, Section 146-33, to prohibit parking on the southwest corner of Jefferson Street for 54 feet west of Liberty Street.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we need to ask for public comment at this moment?
Yes, we do. I will place or state on the record that this ordinance was duly advertised in the Bucks County Advance on April 29, 2010, that the ordinance itself was deposited with the Bucks County Law Library as required, and proof of publication and deposit are in the file. So as a public hearing, it does need to be open to comment if there is any.
Any comments on the board? No? Okay. Does the public wish to be heard? So, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And on the agenda, it lists the authorization to sign a contract. Previous discussions have been held at the work session of the public meeting regarding the hiring of a consultant to advise the Planning Commission in the adoption of the TND ordinance. It was previously recommended by the Planning Commission. Please correct me if I'm incorrect on this, but my understanding is it was recommended by the Planning Commission that assignment be given to Town Planning Partnership, LLC, whose principal is Mark Evans. A proposed contract was provided. Comments were made back. Some discussion was held at the work session. I provided a final version of that contract to Council during executive session, and I assume have had an opportunity to review it. I would ask for a motion to authorize the President of Council to sign an agreement with Town Planning Partnership, LLC, to review the proposed traditional neighborhood development ordinance amendments, subject to the provision by Town Planning Partnership, LLC, of proof of insurance acceptable to the borough. There is an issue at this point. They are not carrying insurance, and obviously borough will require that prior to entering into the contract.
May we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just a question, Paul, on the issue of insurance. Just so we're clear, in the contacts you've had with this group, they're in the process of getting insurance?
Yes. You may have some specific information. They have been investigating professional insurance coverage over the last few weeks, and they do have some information in, and they are waiting for some quotes back. So they are actively in the process of getting that insurance coverage. So hopefully that's something that they will obtain quickly, and as soon as anything is required, I will ask them to provide proof of insurance and forward that, and obviously if that is acceptable to the borough, then we can move forward.
What I was going to raise as just a point of interest, or I don't know about concern, but given the fact they do not have insurance and are looking for insurance, if we could give them a defined period of time within which to supply that proof, let's say 15 days from tonight. And here's my concern, and anyone's free to say I shouldn't have it, but if it turns out for some reason that they can't supply that proof of insurance, then by that time, let's say 15 days from now, it would still be about 2 weeks in advance of our next meeting and before the next Planning Commission meeting. And if there was for some reason a reason why we could not go forward with them with a contract because of the insurance, there would be time to have a replacement perhaps in place for our next meeting. In other words, I don't want to see this time lost and it turns out for some reason we don't have a signed contract because they can't or won't get insurance.
The only reaction I have to that is putting a deadline on it. I don't know what their time frame is, and I think that council certainly has the ability to do that. In the planning commission, let's say 15 days go by and planning commission is going to meet, they can certainly review other potential applicants and forward that to council. My concern is if we put a restriction like that on and the proof of insurance comes on day 16, we're going to have to wait until the next meeting and reauthorize the president to sign that contract. I think it's sort of inherent in it that if things aren't moving and we're not comfortable that they're going to satisfy their requirement to provide proof of insurance, then we'll have to move towards looking at somebody else.
I think it's a fair point, and I think we still have a focus on the concern now, and if we do get several weeks down the road and there just seems to be an issue for some reason or another, then we'd be sensitive to that and be ready to act accordingly.
I will just point out for the record, for those that are not aware, the entity that the principals in this entity, though they've been practicing in this area for many years, as I understand, the entity itself is a new entity. So there could be some concern just the fact that they don't have insurance, but my understanding is that they are a new entity and they weren't clear where they were headed and what the scope of the work that they would be doing is. So obviously council needs to take that into consideration, but I don't think that's necessarily a sign. They've not been in practice for 20 years as this entity without insurance.
I would just ask that you let us know, obviously, when they get it, and the contract is signed, but if it seems to be dragging on to our next meeting, to let us know on a timely basis.
Absolutely. I've been in direct contact with Mr. Evans, so I'll keep in touch.
Thank you.
Mike, do we know if the other potential suppliers have what we're looking for?
In terms of, I don't know, the one is the Bucks County Planning Commission, so that's an easy one.
During the same time period, we
Yeah.
may want to find out if we've got this potential problem, regardless of the outcome here.
That's a good point.
I also think, obviously, looking back, maybe going forward when we do we write the proposals to receive proposals, that we put that in there, that an organization needs to provide insurance, so we're not then going back after the fact.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay. If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And I do have one other item
Yeah.
to add to the agenda. There was a previous discussion regarding the zoning ordinance. An issue arose in connection currently with what is an appeal in litigation regarding the Smith-Scherer zoning application on Center Avenue, and a concern about certain language in the zoning ordinance regarding the applicability of dimensional and other zoning requirements to condominium forms of ownership. I believe that the ordinance as it currently stands is clear. I believe that is the borough's position. However, obviously, there is an allegation that there is some ambiguity in that ordinance. In order to address that issue, I have proposed a revision to the ordinance that would make it abundantly clear what the intention of that ordinance is and has always been. In addition, there was a requested change to the zoning ordinance by the zoning officer. Currently, the zoning ordinance prohibits the charging of fees for fence permits, which is somewhat of an unusual prescription to include in a zoning ordinance, and a change to the zoning ordinance eliminating that prohibition was requested. My suggestion to move this along, as I've only prepared a draft and council has only seen that this evening, is possibly to forward a proposed draft of that ordinance to the Planning Commission and ask them to address that at their next meeting, as a change in the zoning ordinance does need to be considered by the Borough and County Planning Commission, but I think perhaps the best process would be to have the Planning Commission review it first, get back their comments, and then ultimately whatever final ordinance is determined can then be forwarded back to the Planning Commission and to the County Planning Commission for review, and then passage by this council.
That will require a motion.
Sure. I guess a motion to I guess, authorize me to prepare the ordinance or revise, to continue work on the ordinance and to present that ordinance to the Planning Commission for their review at their next meeting.
Okay. May I have such a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
That's all I have.
Okay.